Welcome to Inspire West Michigan, the podcast that celebrates the visionaries, change makers, and business leaders shaping our region. Whether you're a fellow entrepreneur, emerging leader, or curious community member, Inspire West Michigan delivers content that informs, uplifts, and empowers. In each episode, we'll go behind the scenes with local CEOs, presidents, and entrepreneurs to uncover the stories, strategies, and values that drive their success and inspire our communities. From Grand Haven to Grand Rapids and beyond, this is Inspire West Michigan. Let's dig in. Welcome to Inspire West Michigan. In today's episode, I'll be talking to Jennifer Owens, the President of Lakeshore Advantage, the nonprofit economic development organization serving Ottawa and Allegan counties. In our conversation, you'll hear about how Jennifer's journey has been anything but linear, and how curiosity, collaboration, and continuous learning have helped keep her inspired and shape our community's future. Hi, Jennifer. Thanks for joining me today.
It's my pleasure. Yeah. Thanks for inviting me.
You're welcome. I'm excited to talk to you. And there's so much that we could talk about, and this hour is gonna go by lickety-split, I'm sure. So let's start out first by talking about where you began in your career.
Yeah, so I began my career really as someone who had a degree in journalism. And back when I went to school, there was not a lot of options for career pathways. And I was in love with Katie Couric and Suzanne Jehoff. You remember those who remember Suzanne?
Absolutely.
I think she's still around the area,
Yep.
So shout out to Suzanne. And I really thought I was going to be a broadcast journalist. I loved to write. I was curious. And so that's the path I took and got my degree and had a couple of journalism jobs, which I liked, but I didn't really find my passion. But I knew I loved to research, learn more about people. I was really inspired by business leaders as well. So a job opened at the state's Economic Development Corporation for a publication called the Michigan Business Report. It's like, wow, that sounds really cool. And I fell in love with economic development. So I kind of stumbled into the position I'm in now, had no idea it exists, and it is what I absolutely love. And I honestly think for most young people, when they think about what am I going to do, don't try to plan so much.
Right,
in a lot
right.
of ways, it's like, hey, the door opened, I jumped in, and I found the profession I love as a result of that.
Well, so between then and now, you've had a couple different stops, and I want to talk about that because you started by saying that, when you were growing up, there didn't feel like there were, it didn't feel like there were a lot of options. And I think, there are a lot of us that can relate to that because I think, they wanted us to be teachers and nurses and things like that. And, if you didn't feel like you fit that mold, then what?
Exactly.
But journalism put you in a position of learning how to be curious, to ask questions. Talk a little bit about how that has shaped the way you go about the work that you do.
Yeah, I think journalism allowed me really early to get in front of some incredible people that I would never have access to. So when I was at Michigan State, go green, we're going to say go green.
White, yeah.
When I was at Michigan State, I was a part of a group called Capital News Service.
Okay.
And we got to interview then Governor Engler, a group of 10 kids, and Governor Engler. And I was like, I'm just going to ask him anything.
Yeah.
So at the time, Engler was potentially going to be a vice president candidate. And I asked him about that, and he was kind of surprised, but I have never had fear to learn from people like that and treating them as people are people. Mm-hmm. And so I think that curiosity and that ability to ask anyone anything in a kind way and learn from them no matter who they are was a great base for me to continue my career.
Yeah, I think people underestimate the respect that is earned when people are curious and they ask really good, deep questions. It means they're listening and that they're eager to learn. And there's so many people that are just really, looking for all the answers to be laid out in front of them. That,
Absolutely.
when you show that genuine curiosity, it goes a long way.
Yeah, I mean, the art, like a lot of what I do is sales, right? In some ways,
Yeah.
I'm selling a community, but the best salespeople are the best listeners.
Yes.
You take time to listen, you understand how people are hardwired, you connect the dots between them and other leaders or resources. But I always say God didn't give you 2 ears and a mouth for a reason.
And one mouth. One mouth and 2
one
ears.
mouth. Yeah,
Yes.
it's like take time to listen
Yeah.
and lean in.
Yeah.
And as a result of that, I think that's been a great path to my success.
So one of the things that we talked about that really inspired me when we met earlier was you talked about how sometimes the best path forward means taking a couple steps back.
Yep.
Can you talk about what that meant in your life?
Yeah. So like I said, I was at Michigan Economic Development Corporation. I started just writing for a business magazine and got a lot of opportunities there to head the state's marketing communications team, also to head their business retention team. But my life got in the way of my career.
As it does.
Yeah. And so my husband and I were going to have our first child. And we were commuting. I was commuting from Metro Detroit to go to Lansing. And I didn't want to leave economic development. I loved my job, but this wasn't sustainable for me to commute back and forth. I also knew that I was really interested in the business development side of economic development, like boots on the ground, helping companies one-on-one. Love marketing and communications, but it was time for me to try something else.
Yeah.
And so at the time, I actually made a pitch to my boss and said, I'd like to take a demotion. I'd like to take on a role as a business development manager from home in the community I lived in. And it was a step back, and it was a salary cut. And people were shocked. They're like, why would you do that?
Yeah.
But for me, it was the right thing to do for my family and also really, frankly, for my career to learn a side of that business that I could have never learned had I not been a field soldier in a way. And so for about 3 years, that's what I did. I learned the groundwork of economic development, working one-on-one with businesses and helping support them. And I found another part of the profession I fell in love with. But it was hard, right? It was hard as a really driven woman who wants to be successful. I know I also thought a lot about, like, am I ever going to get back into leadership again? You took this step back and it's like, okay, what does that say about me? But it worked out. Fast
Absolutely.
forward.
I mean, getting to understand all the different roles that play a role makes you a better leader.
Yeah.
Like I always figure you have to be able to do all the work that you lead. You have to be able to understand the work that you lead to get done in order to truly, lead appropriately.
Yeah, I mean, when you talked about career path not being linear, I always say, like, your career is like, in my mind, like a Christmas tree.
Yeah.
If you're really successful, not like this perfect ladder of success. And so I've had a lot of branches that I've gone out, but they've made me better and stronger as a result. And as I got further in my career, I was okay with, like, taking those risks, and it doesn't always have to be point A goes to point B. Sometimes it's A goes to D or over on the other side up to F, and that's worked out. Yeah.
So in that role, I imagine that you were touring businesses. You were understanding how things are being made, how businesses are operating, what their challenges are.
Yeah. So I supported Macomb and Oakland counties, so two of the fastest, growing Detroit metro counties in the state. And I got to see inside some incredible manufacturing facilities. Like, what I also love about my job is we get to see how things are made, and you have this great respect for, like, these complex products that we all use every day and what components go into them and how hard people work to make them. So there's nothing more that I like than a plant tour, which is in a manufacturing shop. It's, like, so fascinating to me in a weird way. And so having these businesses really give me a tour, show me inside their company and what made it tick. And then really, like we talked about, listening, leaning in and understanding what were their pain points, what is their challenge, and seeing if at the state or the local level we can provide resources to help overcome that, or at minimum identify that as an issue that needs to be addressed in the future. So for me, that was so fun. And you're cold calling people too. I had to schedule my own stuff, so I'm cold calling people I don't know, showing up at businesses who, dropping off information or talking to receptionists. So it was hustle, and you had to hustle. No one was going to do the work for you. And so that gave me a great respect on how hard it is to get in the door.
Absolutely.
And then once you're in the door, build that relationship and bring value to those businesses who have very limited time to meet with people from, at that time, the government who's here to help.
Yeah.
So make it worth their time. And so
And
I learned so
what's the
much.
pitch? What's the pitch to get you in to get that meeting?
I think at the state, very similar to Lakeshore Advantage, is that we're aware of all these local state resources that are available to businesses, and we can bring those directly to you by listening to what your needs are. If I'm a business, like every day there's more than enough work to do. So to take time to understand, are there training grants available? Are there tax credits?
Yeah.
Who is a resource in marketing outsourcing? They just don't know where to go.
Right.
And so to bring that directly to them and to share best practices of other businesses in the area and what they're doing to overcome those barriers or to lean into those opportunities, that is very valuable. I think in today's world where we're all on our phones and looking at all the information, I still think there's such a great value of that face-to-face conversation and relationships. And so taking the time to understand them, learn from them, and then being aware of like thousands of resources that exist and boiling it down very simply in the way they can understand, that's kind of the secret sauce of our work.
Well, and connecting those resources to their pain points.
Right.
People, you just don't know where to go. You know that you have a problem, but oftentimes coming up with a solution means talking to the right people at the right time so that it connects the dots for you.
Yeah, and I think if you look at some of the government or nonprofit resources, they can be really confusing. And so our staff and the staff at the MEDC takes a lot of time to understand the ins and outs of those programs.
Yeah.
Like, what industries qualify? How many jobs do you have to create? What's your minimum wage? And so if I'm a business trying to dive into all of the details of that, quickly your eyes like glaze over and you're like, this doesn't fit for me, and you move on.
Right.
And so making it make sense to them, but then not just rattling off a laundry list of things, half of which wouldn't qualify.
Yeah.
Very much understanding what would work for them and for their team.
Well, and I suspect today with attention spans getting shorter and shorter and just having, competing responsibilities, it's even harder to.
Yeah, it is harder. I would say what I love at our team at Lakeshore Advantage is once we get in the door with a company and help them, the calls get returned right away.
Yeah.
But for us, the hardest thing is we have 700 businesses in the 2 counties we support that we consider companies that export goods and services out of the region. So that's who we support. So if you make something here more than can be consumed locally, that's where we come in. So I have a team of 16, and to get to 700 businesses is not necessarily easy.
No, not
and
at all.
so trying to get in the door with companies we haven't helped or supported before who are probably a little skeptical, like, what can you really do for me?
Right.
But once we get into the door and spend time with them, which is a no-cost service, they're like, wow, I didn't know something like this existed. And that's really fun.
Yeah, definitely. Well, before we get into all that Lakeshore Advantage does and what that has meant for you as a leader and all of that, there were a couple stops in between the MEDC and Lakeshore Advantage. Talk a little bit about what those stops were and what you learned from those experiences.
Yeah, so I had a great time at the MEDC doing statewide economic development work, but really for me, being in a community that you could impact the businesses that you live in was probably the most rewarding and has been the most rewarding. So I had the opportunity to lead business retention and attraction in Ann Arbor. At the time, I was in Metro Detroit. So I was part of that community, and being able to give back and attract businesses to that region was really fun. Ann Arbor, and I'm a Spartan, let me say, but Ann Arbor's got their act together when it comes to growing business development. When you have a research university like the University of Michigan, in a lot of ways I was just order taking, like Barracuda Networks would call me, Google would call me and be like, hey, we might want to locate here. I'm like, all right. But that was really fun to be in the center of that technology hub and to see that growth. And then after Ann Arbor, there was an opportunity in Kalamazoo, Southwest Michigan First. At the time, I don't know if anyone on here knows Ron Kitchens, great economic development leader, been recruiting me for a long time to come over to his team. And I said, I might, but I want to actually lead an economic development organization. So if I come, you need to work with me to get to that point. And I'm going to be 3 to 5 years. And I was really honest because that's where I wanted to go. And kudos to Ron, who was like, I'll do that. No problem. And so
that's a big deal because, and I mean, I think particularly at its time, because that was 15 years ago.
About 15 years.
Yeah. So, now we look at it differently now, right? We don't want people to leave. Of course, you want people to come and just stay forever. It makes our life easier. You really, truly believe that the people you're putting your time and effort into are there for the long haul. But frankly, they aren't as much as they used to be. But in 15 years ago, you really did want people to come and stay.
Right.
And you really did believe that they would unless they told you differently. And here you were coming out and saying right out of the gate, I'm only staying for 3 to 5 years. That's all you're going to get from me. And this is a step in my ladder.
Right.
And help me do it. And he said, okay.
Yeah. And I was bold enough at the time. Like, I didn't have to move. I love my job. He'd been recruiting me. And I'm like, well, here's what I want. And I would encourage, especially women, to just be bold.
Know, absolutely.
It was a bold thing to say. It was
yes.
like, I'm not going to be here for the long term. And if that doesn't work for you, that's okay. I love what I do. And he leaned in and he's like, all right, awesome. I got you. And 3 years later, Randy Thalen, who is the head of the Right Place Now, was leaving to go to Omaha. And he walked into my office and he said, I'm leaving. I really would love for you to consider taking my job.
Wow.
And I had to wrestle with that a little bit too, because I love being at Southwest Michigan First for 3 years, but it was within the 3 to 5 years.
Yeah.
And I'm like, I can't sell myself short by being comfortable. And so 12 years ago, I interviewed for that position and was able to lead the team. But lots of people helping me along the way and lots of mentors. Randy's been a great mentor of mine too, but people who believe that I could do more than I ever thought I could. And I'm like, well, if they think I can do it, maybe I can.
Yeah.
And so my other advice is listen to people who know that you can do more than you think you can and lean in, jump through that window.
Well, mentorship has, played a big role in your journey. And, we talked a little bit about mentorship and what mentors mean to the people that are coming up in their careers now. And you had some really good advice that I hope you'll share.
Yeah. I mean, mentors have been hugely important to me, but it was one of my first bosses who said, you need to have your own personal board of directors. And those people that you look up to and aspire to be like, they're not going to tap you on the shoulder and say, I'd love to mentor you. Can I? Yeah. And so his encouragement
These are busy people.
Yeah, his encouragement was reach out to them and say, I'm looking for a mentor. Here's what I'm looking for. Would you agree to once a quarter meeting with me? I'll schedule the meetings. I'll take care of all the questions. I'll come to wherever it works for you. Yep. And I was blown away by the number of people who were like, sure. And I always took that time really seriously.
Yeah.
I prepped. I followed up before. I made great use of their time. And really, I only expected a year commitment, but most of them kind of stuck around as my mentors for 5, someplace 10 years.
Yeah.
And that's always been a huge help for me. What I love too is these were mentors who would tell me like it is.
Yes.
They weren't people that I worked with, right? And they could tell me whether or not I was blowing smoke or here's what I think. And so I also think having mentors that aren't just mentors that you work with now, that you can trust with, your biggest fears or your greatest aspirations.
Right. Well, their horse in the race is you.
Yeah, exactly.
Yep. They don't. They aren't looking at it as what am I going to gain from this? Their horse in the race is you, and their measurement of success is your success.
Right.
And that's a really cool position to put someone in. I mean, I think for those that do have an opportunity to be a mentor, there's a lot to gain for the mentor too.
Yeah.
But you do have to ask for it.
Right. And you do have to make sure it's a good use of their time. Like you want the mentors to walk away either saying like, oh, I really helped them, or actually I learned a lot from them as well. And I was surprised, like a lot of mentors started sharing their challenges with me. I'm like, you think I'm prepared to like answer these? But They're like, yeah, I have the same issue too. So it really has become like a give and take relationship.
Yeah.
Where I thought I was highly unprepared to advise them, but they trusted me over time to give, them feedback as well.
Yeah.
So
That's pretty great.
Mm-hmm.
Pretty great. So are there things that you have learned during the steps in your career that you wish you would have known, or that if you could go back and tell the 25-year-old those things, what would they be?
I would say don't worry so much. I mean, I spent a lot of time worrying, like, is this what life's supposed to be? What is my path? What should I be doing in 6 years, 12 months? And I guess maybe that worrying got me to where I was, but it also created a lot of undue anxiety because it did actually work out. So trust yourself, like believe in your gut. Myself, like many others, I have a lot of self-doubt and don't believe always I can do things. So I would say, like, believe in yourself, like know that you can and will be able to do that if you think you can. So just giving my 25-year-old self a little bit of pep talk as well, who was kind of like, I'm just making stuff up as I go along. I don't know if this is the way it's supposed to be.
Yeah.
And guess what? No one knows.
No.
And there is no way it's supposed to be. And so as I get older, I'm like, wow, I wish I could have given myself more self-confidence at that time, and also just more like calm and peace to not worry so much about how it's all going to end up.
I think we all suffer a bit from imposter syndrome or from I don't know what the next step should be. And, I do think we need to trust ourselves more, Yeah,
I mean, I think women in particular too. I mean, one of the things I've done a lot of studying about women in leadership, and it's like, if you look at a job and there's 10 different criteria for that job, women will not apply unless they have all 10. Whereas men will apply if they have like 5. And so also as a woman, I'm like, hey, like put yourself out there more. And there were opportunities that may have passed myself by because I was like, nah, not right for me. But get a little bolder.
Yeah, sometimes we have to fake it till we make it.
Often.
I mean, and you have the, I think what we need to recognize is that it's the raw materials, that we need to get us where we need to go, that you don't have to have done something before.
Yeah.
That, you can take the leap because you have what it takes to get there, not that you've literally walked that path before.
Yeah, I remember, like, sometimes I would say I was also a little too bold. Sometimes I should have done a little bit more studying, but I have a lot of team members who need to know all the answers. Like, they'll need to know every answer before they go into a scenario where I'm like, I can just figure it out. Or I can say, like, I'll get back to you. So really early in my career, I think it was 27 or 28, the CEO of, I think it was MADC at the time, couldn't attend an event. And I was like the 4th choice. And I was on the stage debating clean energy with then Mayor Verge Bonero.
Oh, my goodness.
So Verge Bonero, if you don't know him, he was like a wild, bold, crazy guy. He was a politician.
So you had no idea what was going to come
at
you.
No idea. Didn't know Verge. I mean, I knew him slightly, but in clean energy, I just knew enough to be dangerous. And it was really, I was like, wow, I need to do a better job of knowing my homework more. And I got thrown in, I think it was 24 hours before, but I was like, yeah, sure, I can do it. So sometimes you learn by falling on your face too. In that case, I was like, ooh, that was not good. But I said I could. I helped, my boss at the time. I learned a lot. And I don't want to be on the stage with Verge Bonero again.
I think we learn a lot from just going for it. As I always say, I'll throw up later.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I love that. I throw up later.
So, we talk about this, like having to have all the answers and having someone direct you down this path. I find that this generation kind of coming up into these newer leadership roles or opportunities that, somewhere along the line, I don't know if it's teachers or what have you, but they're really instructing, these young people to, to ask for the path, to be laid out right in front of them. And, what advice can you give give to young people about that? I mean, your career path has been, anything but stones laid right next to one another.
Not at all. Yeah. And I think it is interesting because, we've spent a lot of time leaning into the next generation of talent, so 25 to 35-year-olds. So we have a council and we ask them. And one of the number one things that our council members want is career pathways.
Mm-hmm.
So they want to know, I'm an engineer in 2 years, what type of other engineer, how do I get to a senior engineer and all of that. And in large companies, they do have the ability to do that. But small to mid-sized companies, you kind of make your own path and you trailblaze it
that's
through.
one of the benefits of being a small to mid-sized company is you can be flexible
Yeah.
and you can lean into the skill sets of the people in the role and they truly have the ability to make it what they want. They just have to have the courage to do it.
Do you remember those books, Choose Your Own Adventure?
Yes.
And I think they had it too with, it was on TV as well. But it's if you look at your career like choosing your own adventure instead of your career, what's the box in 2 years? What's the box in 5 years? But I do like an individualized training plan. And I think some of this is coming from schools, which it's each student needs an individualized approach to education because we're all different. And I think that's great. A lot of our schools are now doing more individualization approach to educating kids. And I do love that because we all learn differently. But in a job, you don't have a boss who is teaching you. You've got to teach yourself. I also and I try really hard with my kids not to do this, but there's a lot of Velcro parents out there who make the decisions for their kids and their kids call them about everything. And so my encouragement to parents would be when your kids ask you if they're adult-ish, let's say, almost done with high school, or ask them first, I don't know, what do you think?
Yeah, such a good question.
Encouraging your kids to think for themselves and not think for them will definitely prove them more successful in a career instead of them constantly calling you and then you're giving them the answer. Because if we can't think for ourselves, then we're not going to be able to blaze our own trail.
Right. And it has to be an approach that, is true to them, right? Not true to you.
Yep.
I mean, we're all put together differently. We like to believe that our kids are sort of this, image of ourselves or what have you, or we imagine that to be. But at the end of the day, they aren't.
Right.
And
respect that. And that's okay.
Yeah.
So my middle son is going to school for health and physical education. And he kind of fought that for a while because I always thought he'd be a teacher.
Yeah.
And I'm like, well, you do what you want to do. So he's going to school. And we had a conversation just last night about I thought he'd be a great special education teacher. And he pushed back on me. He's like, I don't think that's my path. And I'm not, and I'm like, all right, that's cool. That's just something, hey, would you ever like to explore that? And I'm great with that. I love that. I'm like, I love that you're doing what you're doing.
Yeah.
It's just one avenue if you'd ever want to explore it. I know a place that you could see incredible kids who could use your support. And he was like, nah. And I'm like, all right, cool. That's good. Because
he knows
for
himself
me,
enough to say that's not for me.
And I want him to do that. And so I don't want to create my own vision for him. I want him to create his own vision for himself and empower him to do that.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Well, for those that don't know what it means to be in economic development and lead an economic development organization, give us the Reader's Digest version of what Lakeshore Advantage does.
Yeah. And I would say each economic development group is really different. So that's why there isn't a view. I would say overall, our goal is to look at the community's assets, maintain our base of businesses who could leave the region, and interconnect public, private, nonprofit sectors. So Lakeshore Advantage goal simply is to ensure this generation and the next wants to live and work in our community. How you go about that is very different, right? And so the first way we go about it is maintaining the base of existing companies that we have who choose to be here but could be anywhere else in the globe. And like I said, those are companies who export goods and services out of the region, have customers and suppliers everywhere, and they're here because they love our community or the workforce, but they could be somewhere else. So maintaining that base is first and foremost, is keeping them healthy and growing. And then outside of that, those companies direct to us. What are the barriers? What are the challenges? And so that's when we get more engaged in some of these strategic initiatives, big picture issues, things like access to workforce housing, which we're spending a lot of work on now because we know our existing employment base has really kind of identified that hey, we want to grow, but we're having a really hard time attracting people here or keeping people here because it's so expensive to live. And they're living farther and farther away. And eventually we potentially lose that workforce to a job that's closer. So our team's rolling up our sleeves, partnering with a lot of other great organizations in that space and trying to figure out a way to improve the workforce housing stock.
So there are other organizations that are sort of, that have that list of those key issues on the top of their list as well. And I'm sure that there's some crossover that happens between Lakeshore Advantage and the Chambers of Commerce and, other organizations that are out for the same goals. Help us understand how collaboration versus competition helps to lead our region further down the path.
Yeah, and I would say we work really hard on a collaboration, not competition. So I got to give a huge shout out to all of our chambers of commerce. They're huge partners for us, especially Grand Haven. I know got me on this today, but I love Mark Allen and his team. The chambers are so important to encourage broad-based advocacy and support of all the businesses. So they also serve as our boots on the ground support as well to say, here's what we're hearing across the board and keeping us informed of things that are going on in their community as well. So we spend a lot of time proactively meeting with our chambers of commerce, other organizations that are in similar spaces. For instance, the Right Place in Grand Rapids, Greater Muskegon Economic Development Corporation, to make sure that we're not replicating.
Yes.
And if possible, if there are things they're doing that are really amazing that we could extend to our region that we're not doing here. So for us, collaborating is so important because we're all one West Michigan region and quite frankly, Grand Rapids region. I know people don't like that, but that's what our metro is called. And when you're not from here, you don't care about cities and townships and counties. You look at a region as a whole, and if it's healthy and growing, if you're looking to relocate a business or as a highly skilled professional, you're going to look at that region as a whole and make sure it's healthy. So we want to make sure there's so many organizations that are helping our businesses succeed, and we're not doing this work alone. It takes a lot of collaboration with those key partners.
Yeah. So I was on earlier this week, went to the CEO Summit in Grand Rapids, hosted by the Grand Rapids Chamber.
Yeah.
And Rick Baker talked about the importance of local business ownership and what that means to the community and what that means to economic development. Can you speak to that a little bit?
Yeah, I mean, I think, so if you look at the people who invest in economic development organizations or to chambers, most of them are locally owned and operated. Our team is starting an initiative now with an out-of-area headquarter outreach because we've got about 20,000 employees who are employed by parent companies who aren't here. And so you become more of a dot on the map. So we're working to ensure there is a strong relationship both here and, say, Denver or China or Japan. But what we see that makes West Michigan so special is we have a lot of local-owned family businesses, many of which are facing transitions, either next generation, retiring of the CEO in general. And we have a lot of interest in private equity from all over the globe to either acquire those companies, potentially move them out. Maybe they'll maintain them. So we really want to make sure we're preserving as many of those small-owned family businesses as possible and encouraging the next generation to kind of step in, which isn't easy, but it is a really important element of what makes West Michigan so special.
So that's really what feeds or provides the fuel for Lakeshore Advantage too. It's a nonprofit organization, and your funding comes from the businesses in the community and investors and things like that. Can you speak to how those investors, why they get involved and why they feel that continuing economic development helps their company as well and makes that investment worthwhile?
Yeah, so we were actually funded by a group of business leaders who thought that economic development should be removed from government. At the time, most of it was being led by government entities and a nonprofit that was safe from politics too, which is another thing, like the change in politics. And so we've always made sure 60% of our funding comes from the private sector. About 40% comes from a strong second partner, which is local government and contract for services. And so we make the case for companies to invest in us, not because they're getting anything, because they care that there is an organization full-time keeping the economy healthy and growing. And growing a community doesn't happen by accident, and preserving a community's health doesn't happen by accident either. And so we're here for the long haul. We've been around for roughly 23 years, many different changes and leaders of communities and government heads, and our organization is designed to sustain and preserve throughout those political cycles and changes. And so it seems like a simple case, but we really want to make sure people aren't investing in us just thinking they're going to get something, because they might ultimately get something. But overall, a healthy community means better property tax values. It means that we're not seeing blight in this community as a whole. It means that you can attract and retain talent as well. So a lot of the indirect impact of our work, all companies benefit from, but it is a small team of investors that keep us healthy and growing, and we're very appreciative for them.
Yeah. So I suspect a portion of what you do is that fund development, the investor relations.
Yeah, we do. I mean, so myself and our head of investor engagement, Beth Blanton, who's amazing, most of our time is spent just engaging our investors. Again, when we talk about retention, like, so the work of economic development, 80% is spent retaining our existing businesses, 20% attracting new companies in or helping our startups grow to revenue stage businesses. So we spend a lot of time engaging in our investors, with our investors one-on-one, helping them understand the impact of our work, what we're doing on a day-to-day basis, and how we're putting their investment to work to keep the community healthier. And so it's not just once a year we're sending an invoice. We have quarterly gatherings with our investors. We have small group education sessions. And for me, that's really important, because most of our growth will come financially from the existing investor base. Some new ones will come and go over time, and we love that. But it's this community of people who care and give back, and who are really part of our strategic planning process too. Yeah. So we don't do our work in a vacuum. They're a vital part of our business plan.
And what are some of the success metrics that those investors are wanting to hear about,
It depends. I mean, each one of them is a little bit different. I mean, most people get excited about jobs and investment. So what's the new shiny ball company that we've worked to attract? But I'm seeing more so people are excited about entrepreneurship. Yeah. So we have a business incubator, and opened a larger incubator about a year ago in downtown Holland, and thought maybe we'd have 20 to 30 companies. We have 53 companies right now, and the goal is to grow the next generation of major employers. So I'm very surprised, the larger companies, how excited they are about having a robust startup base, because many of them look at them as potential acquisition targets too for them, so they want to hear about that. People like to hear when it comes to housing, how are we doing? What are new housing developments that we've helped to put in place, and what are we seeing for strategies to kind of move that forward? So what each investor looks for is really different, but we have all kinds of metrics and outcomes. I think what I'm most impressed with, or especially for a team as a whole, for every dollar investors invest in us, we typically bring $100 to $500 back to the community in private sector investment. So that's a great return overall. Now, and we're also leveraging, I would say, at least $100 million a year in other resources for those companies. So that is a pretty solid return for most of our investors who are, probably actively involved in the stock market. I don't think you'd find a stock that would return that much.
Right. No. So in the time that you've been with Lakeshore Advantage, your priorities have shifted. The world has changed.
Oh, for sure.
Certainly COVID sped everything up, right? 100-fold. What has been most surprising to you in that progression over the course of the time you've been there?
Yeah, I mean, for me, one of our core values is always evolving, right? So we love an always evolving economy, because it will. COVID for me was actually a thrill in the economic development space, because we could really hands on the ground support our businesses, and we got to administer, I think, roughly $75 million in grants to put them back into small businesses and stand up programs that never existed before. So for our team, that was like, let's roll up our sleeves and get it done. I think what's been most surprising to me recently is tariffs as a whole and how, from a business perspective, people want to know what the rules are, and it's black and white. Just tell me the rules and I'll implement them. And for us, it's been really hard because those rules have changed so much, almost on a daily basis. So if you're a company and you're looking to plan for your future, when, tariffs could be 0 tariffs or 100% tariff, it's really hard to plan. So for us, looking at where the future is, and I think they've leveled off a little bit, but business doesn't like uncertainty. If there's uncertainty, it's like, just tell me the rules and I'll play to the rules. And it continues to be hard to know what those rules are, but we do feel those are leveling off. So whenever there's something that we can't say what the rules are, where we can't tell them how to compete, that's really hard because I want to be a resource to them. So that was recently kind of more challenging. The AI tsunami right now, everyone's talking about AI and the impact.
AI tsunami is
know. Yeah. And
the accurate term.
Yeah, it's like AI, everyone. And
it's like a drinking game.
I know,
right?
It's true. It should be. And I'm like someone who loves AI, right? So I love it as a compliment to my work, not to do my work for me, and have tried to continue to learn as much as I can. But it's changing so fast. It's so hard to learn it, and then something new comes out. So I think from a business perspective, that's something I see a lot of people leaning into now, trying to figure out, like, what is their plan? How do they implement it? What makes sense for their workforce? And we're also going through this huge change progression. So anytime massive change like that comes in, change is hard for most people. And especially in companies, it's really, really hard. So how do you get your workforce to feel comfortable, to feel that their jobs are safe, and lean into this massive change? And that's not an easy thing to do.
It's not.
And so it's not going to happen overnight. But I look at it as like, this is something that can make our work and most businesses work better and more efficient with guide rails, with ethics, and with governance in place. And so that's something we've been trying to identify more best practices, companies who are doing things pretty innovative or interestingly enough that could be kind of offered to other small and mid-sized businesses. Because people are always like, well, what is this person doing? What is this person doing? So our job is often to be like, well, they're doing this, and they said that we could share this. And so sharing some of those best practices.
And providing those connections and, that the ability for those people to resource one another.
Right.
That you wouldn't necessarily think to call the company down the street who either does the same thing as you or something entirely different.
Yeah.
But about a shared topic or a shared challenge, you can open that door for them.
Yeah, and learn. Like, I'll give you an example of something I'll toot one of my company's horn. So Metal Flow is a deep drawn metal stamping company, and they're using VR technology, like the VR glasses, to actually work with their team in China to train them on some of their equipment or troubleshoot when there's issues with their team in Holland. So they both put the glasses on. We got a machine that's not working, something's not going well, and they're using it back and forth to train each other.
To experience the same thing.
Yeah, and I'm like, that's amazing.
It's
amazing use. Now, it's not easy to communicate with China. There's a lot of restrictions, and so that's very hard. But they figured out a way to make it work, because sending a team member to China to fix a piece of equipment is also not an easy thing to do.
Right.
So we see a lot of companies leaning into technology and the way to make things more efficient and effective. And ultimately, that person who would have flown to China now gets a lot of time back with their family, a lot of time back with their job, just by strapping on goggles and offering that training support.
Right. And uptime is, crucial.
Yep.
So the amount of time that is wasted in travel and time changes and all of these kinds of things, it goes away.
Right.
You just get to handle the issue urgently as it's needed.
Yeah. And so you have to have leaders who aren't afraid to try. Yeah. That took a while. It's not perfect. It took a while to get it set up. It didn't always work right away. So these technologies, implementing them do take time. And so I would say, like, do small pilots, have people internally who are like lean into new technologies and are excited about that throughout all of your business units, because it can't just be one person's job to implement AI or automation.
Right.
Never going to work.
No. And I mean, getting your team to all engage in it, like, it's not going away.
Right.
So you have a choice. You can either embrace it or be left behind.
Exactly.
So, how can we encourage our teams to get involved and make it work for them?
And, I think it's, I was trying to put in place our plan, and we put in place over the last year. And what I found is I have an incredible team member who just has leaned into AI and learned everything about it just because she really likes it. And we make capacity for her. Now that's her full-time job, just not only AI, but software and systems. And she's one of those people that everyone in our organization loves and respects. So then I asked her to create kind of a committee internally and identify someone from each business unit who also wanted to learn. And so finding the right person internally that has that respect and buy-in, that people are like, well, if she says it, it must be good.
Right. A perfect example how that would not have been on a career path.
No.
Roadmap.
No, definitely it wouldn't have been on hers. I mean,
No.
actually, she came to work with us 5 or 6 years ago as a nurse. She wanted to change, and now she's leaning into AI and software integration.
Very cool.
So I think it's fun to see people take non-traditional paths and lean into where their strengths are. So seeing her kind of lean into this and really making our team better has been a huge difference maker.
Well, I think we all wish that we had, a ball that we could see the future in. But as you look forward at economic development, what do you think the economic development organization of the future looks like, even just say 5 years down the road?
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting because it's not about jobs and investment.
No.
It's going to be about productivity. It's going to be about gross regional product and export. Because if you look at automation and AI, we'll actually need less people. But guess what? Our demographics there are less people actually coming into the workforce. So if you look at since 1955, we continue to have way less babies. So I think we're going to be okay from a jobs perspective. But what I see overall is the workforce entering is probably ready for these new technologies, but we need to also do broad scale training for those who have not experienced it as well. So I think there's going to be a significant demand for more technology skills and integration for our workforce, and looking at how we can get people productive and prosperous as a whole. I think we'll continue to compete for talent. So when you say there's less people entering in the workforce, which there clearly will be if you look at birth numbers, talented people have choices of where to live and work.
Yes, they do.
And more than often, they're driving with where they want to live, not the job.
Yeah.
And so continuing to work to make sure our region has strong places, strong downtowns, incredible lifestyle, cost of living, and that we're keeping the amenities that they need healthy and growing, and we're not afraid to toot our own horn a little bit. I think for West Michigan in particular, we could do a better job of bragging about ourselves. It's such a humble community.
Yeah, I was going to say that's not really the West Michigan way.
It isn't. But if we're going to compete for talent, once people get here, they don't want to leave from other regions, but they're like, I had no idea that this existed, right? And so how do we brag a little bit more about the place we live and how incredible it is? Because we're going to need more people as we have more folks exiting the workforce as well to continue to keep our companies
and all the more
thriving.
reason we need local business ownership, and why you need to, create those relationships with the companies that are owned or headquartered outside the region but have plants here, is to make sure that our communities stay
absolutely.
strong.
And really lean into that next generation and listen. So one of our new initiatives is this Next Gen Talent Council, and asking them, it's a group of 20 to 30 emerging leaders in our hardest find careers, and asking them, what are you looking for in a place, in a job, in a career? And they're identifying the biggest challenges, and then we're using that information to either share with our employers or put initiatives in place. And it's interesting, what they want is also very similar to what those exiting the workforce want. They want walkable communities. They want to live in downtowns. They want a great quality of place, quality of life. They want access to affordable housing, and they want career pathways, which is all the things that we've talked about, right? So they're not that different than the generation exiting the workforce, but keeping our communities healthy and growing is going to be an important challenge.
Yeah. So what gives you the most optimism about the next generation of leaders as you're meeting with these next gen folks and you're, talking about?
Yeah, they're so darn smart. I mean, I talk to kids in high school and I'm like, you could work at my organization, right? They're fearless. They lean into technology. They're incredibly insightful and thoughtful. What I think they need is professional experiences as early as possible, even in high school for most of these kids. They are wise beyond their years. I think this generation who's exiting high school, once they come in, there'll be 5 generations in the workforce right now. Wow. So it'll be interesting to see like those generational changes. But they need mentors, they need support. But I'm inspired. Like I get a chance to speak to university classes, high school classes. Recently, I spoke to a group of interns, and the questions they ask, I'm like, that's a great question. Like I've never heard that before. They stump me, and I don't really get stumped all that often on questions. So they've got their act together. Now the goal is to keep them here, right?
Yes. Yeah.
Because they have choices.
Yep.
And we want to make sure this community is their choice.
And we're a great boomerang community, but you really kind of wish that people, would just kind of stay for the whole time because we don't want to wait for them to come back.
Right. I would love that. I mean, the hard question was one of these interns. He came in and he's from Florida, and he's like, looks like most of you have been here for most of your lives. Haven't you wanted to travel or live somewhere else? And I was like, well, that's kind of rude, but kind of nice. Whatever. But I actually, when I graduated from college, I did not want to be in West Michigan. So it was either Chicago or Detroit. I wanted big city life. That was what I was going to do. There's nothing my parents could do to change my mind. And eventually I moved to Detroit. I had a job offer in Chicago, so I don't know which one would. But I loved it there. But slowly over time, I was like, gosh, I really miss it. I miss the community. I miss the people. I miss the lake.
Yeah.
And so sometimes you have to leave to make the heart grow fonder, which was my case. I would love for everyone to stay, but
and the thing is, we do want everyone to spread their wings, and a lot can be learned in these other communities and in these other organizations, and so they do bring great value. And
I would even say, like, back in the day when I was graduating, Grand Rapids would not have even been a thought in my mind, because I was like, Grand Rapids. But now, like, my son, who does want big cities, like, actually Grand Rapids is really cool. Like, they got a great downtown. We've got the concert venue, the soccer stadium.
Yeah.
So we now do have a really great, thriving urban offering. When I graduated, I was like, Grand Rapids was not the place I wanted to be. But that's a totally different story now.
As we look at the future, as we look at AI and economic development, how do you think the businesses or the entrepreneurs that are looking to start new businesses, what are the kinds of things, what are the business gaps that you feel them leaning into for new business opportunities? And do you think that there's a direction that you see our region kind of leaning toward that we have never before?
Yeah, I think, like I said, our entrepreneurial ecosystem is booming. Our entrepreneurs are some of the smartest people that I've ever met. And my husband and I opened restaurants and had them for 10 years. And you got to be a little crazy to be an entrepreneur. You do. And we did. I was still working full time, and then he did this. So they're also people who really want everything and want it now, which is good. I think the biggest gap that you'll see from our entrepreneurs is access to capital. They all want access to capital. Many of them probably need more access to mentorship. They also need access to skilled business leaders who can come alongside them and partner on their company. But I think a demand that we don't see here as much is for angel investing. So that's that early stage funding. So most businesses get started. It's like friends, family, founders, fools, they say. But angels are a group, typically high net worth individuals who invest in early stage companies and help move them forward. In some cases, they take a small stake in that company as well. We have found the angel networks that we see locally or in the state are often investing more in follow-on funding, which means they're investing in 2 times, like the first time and the second time, not so much investing in that really early stage first company. So we are going to start working harder with our existing angel networks, and then also trying to encourage more high net worth individuals or people who just left a job and have resources that they want to invest in to explore angel investing. The benefit from it is that, you have a tax write-off as a result. You can be a mentor side by side with one of these strong entrepreneurs. But if it works, and I know some of these will work, you can get a nice return over time. So we see that as a gap. The companies that we support, they're not at this point venture capital funded, which venture capital is like, we want a quick return within 5 years. They're more like, in some cases, 10 years before you get a quick return. Also, most venture capital companies like to invest in software startups, and our region is more about physical products, make products, services, which isn't typically something a venture capitalist would back. So we see that as a need, and we'll be leaning into that a little more deeper in the next year or two.
Very cool. Well, certainly, your restaurant zig or zag was something that we had not talked about.
I know, yeah.
But, just another example of how, your path has not been laid out in front of you, and that asking good questions and being curious and collaborating and keeping yourself open to new opportunities have helped you to really make quite a career. Lastly, what's something that might surprise us that really gets you up in the morning?
Oh, what's something? That's a hard question. I would just say, like, my kids and their future. I don't know if it's surprising, but really, like, I do this job because I want my kids to live and work here, and I want to be surrounded by my family and have a place that they want to choose to be part of.
Yeah.
And so for me, the job is kind of selfish, right? I mean, it's all
Not
about
really.
them.
Don't you feel like sort of the whole world is your child in that way,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
You want companies to want to be here, and you want people to want to choose to be here, and you're creating that.
Yeah. So,
platform.
it's selfish. I have 3 boys. I love them. I want their future to be here. I want to see this region continue to thrive. I guess the surprising thing about me is, like, every weekend I'm around watching a boy with a ball in some way. So, like, my job is to be my kid's, like, sports mom. Yeah. So I don't really have a social life. Now, when my youngest, who is 15 now, is done with high school, I got to come up with some hobbies. So if anyone has any ideas.
You got to remember what you like to do again.
Yeah, like every weekend it's been just following these kids around.
Yeah.
So I'm hitting this next stage where I'm like, this is gonna be a new chapter for me. So if anyone has some great hobby ideas.
That was the hardest thing for me about my kids getting older and, leaving the nest, was trying to figure out what I wanted to do, who I wanted to be outside of work.
Exactly.
And being a mom. And I loved being a mom. And I wasn't ready to be done being a mom.
Yeah.
And, and you never really are done being a mom. But the everyday routine of the mom stuff and sports and things like that, it's a very hard thing to give up.
Right. And so we'll see what my next chapter is.
Yeah.
But again, I want it to be not work related, like you said, something fun.
Yes.
I also have a passion for dogs and animals, so I volunteer at Harbor Humane Society too. So might be something with animal rescue. I don't know. There's always more than enough things, but I want to get back to, like, what I like to do, not necessarily being a mom and an economic developer. So
well, the good news for you is that nothing's gonna slow you down, and you're not afraid to zig and zag.
I'll keep zigging. I'll keep zagging.
Well, the world is run by those people who show up. So,
exactly.
Yeah. Well, thank you for joining me today. It's been really fun to learn more about you and about Lakeshore Advantage. Thank you for your time.
Thank you so much. Yeah. Have a great day.
Thank you.
Take care.
Thanks for listening to Inspire West Michigan. If you enjoyed today's episode, be sure to follow or subscribe wherever you listen to podcasts, and leave us a review to help others find our show. Visit inspirewestmichigan.com and follow us on social media for more behind-the-scenes stories. Until next time, stay inspired, West Michigan.